Moving right along to lesson 1.8, where we are talking about physical and chemical changes. We did a brief introduction to what physical and chemical properties were, but now we want to talk about physical changes and then chemical changes. Physical changes, like it says here, physical changes are changes that take place to the form of a substance but don't change the structure. So when something undergoes a physical change, it is still whatever it is at the end. It doesn't convert to something else. It just takes a different form. So like it says here, cutting something in half, right? Or tearing a piece of paper in half. That's a physical change. You still have paper, but you have two smaller pieces of paper. Um, or changing the temperature of something. Like water is still water, whether it's ice, liquid water, or steam, still H2O, regardless, right? So freezing a liquid into a solid, boiling a liquid into a gas, um, or changing the shape somehow of a sample. So all of these things are physical changes. Like I said, cutting a piece of paper in half, freezing water to make ice, um, or otherwise like crumpling up an aluminum can. Um, all of these things are physical changes. Then when we talk about chemical changes, what happens in a chemical change is something actually changes into something else. So there's a chemical reaction that occurs that changes the structure of the sample, right? So if I have Legos and I rearrange them, they're still Legos, but they're in a different order, right? So the structure has changed. That's a chemical change. Um, After a chemical change, like it says here, we have an entirely new substance. Um, Atoms rearranged, something has changed about what it is. Um, and like it says here, some chemical changes are reversible. Most of the time, they are irreversible. You cannot go backwards, right? Um, so, burning, that's a chemical change, or rust, that's a chemical change. I think here's an example of a chemical change. Basically, we this is called electrolysis. And what happens is you run electric current through water, and then you end up these bubbles. Some of them are oxygen gas, some of them are hydrogen gas. So the water, through electricity, gets broken apart into oxygen and hydrogen. And that is a chemical change. Here's the chemical reaction to do that. We have water, and it breaks down into oxygen and hydrogen. Right. So that's a chemical change. We have two completely new things, right? Um, Coming from this process. That is a chemical change. Um, so, like it says here, when a chemical change happens, oftentimes there's some sort of evidence. Like you can see something happening. There might be a color change. There might be an odor produced, right? Like when food rots, that's a chemical change. It makes an odor. It stinks. Um, Energy is given off, whether it's heat or light. That shows you that a chemical change has happened. There might be a gas produced, so there might be bubbles. You mix vinegar and baking soda, you get bubbles, right? That's because a chemical reaction is happening. It produces that gas. Or a new solid is formed, right? You might mix two liquids, and because of the chemical reaction that happens, you end up with a solid. Um, that's called a precipitate, but it's a new solid, something that is chemically completely different, right? So physical change, you don't have a new substance, it just changes shape, basically, or form from liquid to solid or liquid to gas. Chemical change, you have a completely new and different chemical. Atoms are rearranged and you have something completely different.